wear all the hats. You're going to facilitate, manage a chat, hopefully, and also the weight room. Thank you all for coming tonight. Tonight's Evening with Experts is the importance of early literacy experiences. We are super excited to have Hanna Glissendorf, United Way of the Black Hills, as our expert. If you've worked with her before, you know this is something she is very passionate and very knowledgeable about. So it's going to be a great evening. If you haven't hopped on one of these before, here's a quick little layout. We're going to meet the experts. We're going to identify the problem. We're going to hear from the experts. Then there will be time for some of the pre-submitted questions and scenarios. And then if you guys have any thoughts, questions, ideas, anything that you want to run by at the end, there'll be a little bit of time for that too. So without further ado, we are going to turn it over for Hanna to introduce herself.
Perfect. Thanks, Rose. So yeah, like Rose said, my name is Hanna Glissendorf. I am the Director of Early Education at United Way of the Black Hills. Our office is here in Rapid City, but we serve basically the entirety of the Black Hills from, Belle Fourche all the way in the north down to Edgemont in the south. Part of my role is to lead the Black Hills Reads Initiative, which is a national campaign for grade level reading, which is all about trying to ensure that kids are reaching grade level reading proficiency by the 3rd grade. I also work very heavily on our Early Learner Rapid City initiative and Jolly Part Imagination Library and all sorts of other early education initiatives. So that's very much where my passions lie. I've been at United Way now for about 3 years, but before that, I worked as an advocate for youth with disabilities through Disability Rights South Dakota. So I've been working in early education in some way for about 6 years now. I hold a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I also studied English as my secondary. And that's kind of where I really developed my passion for promoting literacy and high quality early learning experiences for children. And of course, I will say I'm a huge reader myself. So reading is something that I love to do. I love to make sure that other kids love to read as much as I do. And you can always find me basically with a book in my hand. So that's a bit about me.
Love it. Thank you, Hanna. I know most of you. Here's a quick summary. I'm not going to read everything on here. I've been in education for over 15 years, early childhood itself for probably around 14. I was an ESL teacher, so I have a strong passion as well for teaching our youngest children how to gain these basic literacy concepts. So get to slap that MS after my name now. Without much diving else into myself, I want to get into the topic. So this quote here, reading is the gateway for children that makes all other learning possible. And you guys probably on some level know this already, right? That they have to have base level to progress even through your own early childhood centers, right? But tonight we're going to hear even long-term the weight that carries from these literacy skills. Hanna's going to really come in with some heavy hitting facts that I know Joe and I, when we went over, our jaws were kind of, left agape when we heard some of them. So it's going to shine a light on your work and the importance of it. So not that we don't already value you, but now you should hopefully feel like, oh my gosh, I have some say and some control over these guys' lifelong success. So welcome to tonight. Literacy, usually when it first comes to mind, we think of like handwriting and learning how to read, right? But it's so much more than that. It is communication, it's connection, and it's belonging to your environment. So it's not extra, it's a condition for equity. It's how we set that even playing field for everyone. The ways children learn to listen, speak, read, and write shape that academic journey and how they are able to have relationships with others, navigate their world. And here's the truth, it's very complex. Literacy development is relational, it's cultural, and it's very human, which being a human is messy. And many of you are already doing a lot of literacy in your early learning environments. You're doing it daily through song, storytelling, and making those human relationships and connections. So you're already doing beautiful things. We're going to shine a light on it. We're going to draw attention to it. We're going to find ways that you can build those up even more. So we are going to go over some principles that Hanna and I have identified, dive into some resources, and hopefully you guys all leave tonight feeling confident and competent in creating some great literacy experiences. Okay, so why should we focus on early literacy experiences? I touched on a couple of things, but it's intertwined with their language, their culture, and their identity. They're figuring out who they are, who their family is, who their community is, and you get to play a part in that. It's foundation for equity, connection, and that lifelong learning process. And a part of that are the systems that support the families, the educators, the communities, our nation at large as literacy partners. They're all stakeholders in this. So we just have to continue to convince them that they need buy-in into it. And again, Hannah have some hard-hitting data that hopefully if you can share that, then you'll have a leg to stand, right? So we are going to look at centering literacy. We're going to strengthen the foundation of early learning. And we're going to affirm that every child comes into this capable and able to have a seat at the table. All right, let's jump into the principles that Hanna and I have identified. There are 8 of them, and we are going to start off with Hanna.
Perfect. Yeah. So, like it says on the screen, our first main pillar that we're going to touch on today is that literacy is really foundational for every child. So, from birth, children's brains are really developing at an incredible pace. They're, basically forming over 1 million new neural connections every second. And research actually shows that basically up to 90% of brain development happens before the age of 5. So those early years are really critical for developing the brain pathways that support literacy skills like language and reading. So basically, when we're talking or singing or reading to babies and toddlers, we're literally wiring their brains for the future, which I think is pretty cool. So when you think about it, the bedtime story that you're reading to your kid tonight is actually probably shaping their ability to succeed later on in high school. It's shaping how they can problem solve in their future careers, and it's shaping a lot of how they can build meaningful relationships throughout life. Can we go to the next slide? Um, oh, there we go. I was going to say my screen was frozen for a second, but so we are really setting the stage for every child's learning journey. Supporting early literacy is really more than just teaching letters or the ABCs. It's about nurturing those speaking skills, the listening skills, reading, and writing skills in ways that really match the child's developmental stage. If we could go to the next slide. So you may be wondering, what does this look like in everyday life? Well, I'm including on this slide here this great resource from Reach Out and Read, which I believe, or I know that Rose sent this out to you guys earlier with all of the links she sent out. So definitely check it out when you have time. It does a really great job of giving some different suggestions for how you can read with a child as they grow. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I wanted to emphasize a few different things. So first, when it comes to a really young child or an infant, early literacy can look like a lot of things, but it might be like reading a board book with your child, pointing at pictures in that book. You could be showing them or going through different rhymes and songs from the same book over and over again. When you get to be a 1-year-old, early literacy could mean naming the pictures in the books that you're reading. This is often a great way for toddlers to learn new words. It could also mean reading different labels and signs wherever you go, so not just in books, but in your general environment. Another great way of improving literacy at the 1-year-old stage is, letting the child choose what books they want to read, or what books they want you to read to them. You could have them hold the books, And also, it's really important to find books that are really interesting for that child to read. So things that have interesting things to look at, like food or trucks or animals, even other children. And then when it comes to a 2-year-old, it might look like, or early literacy might look like asking the child to help turn the pages in a book, or it might look like filling in the words in a story that they know, and naming the pictures that they're seeing. And then as you're getting older, going through those preschool stages, it can mean asking the child to, or asking them questions about the story, or having the child tell you stories. And then, of course, trying to broaden their literacy skills by taking them to the library and allowing them to choose different books. So there's a lot of different ways that you can improve early literacy at each stage. And these small, consistent interactions are really how children are building their vocabulary, how they're building comprehension, and also just how they're learning to love stories and reading. And of course, that is something that is very important as well. As I've mentioned before, early literacy is really not all about reading, even though you would think it would be. Early literacy is really about building the foundation for lifelong learning, communication, and connection. So when children are building strong literacy skills early, they are more equipped to learn across every subject. Reading well means that they can tackle, like math word problems, or they can analyze complex texts. It means that they are more able to engage with, concepts about history and social studies. So literacy is really what unlocks the ability to keep learning, and to adapt and to grow going forward. And then, of course, literacy is also about communication and how children are making sense of their world and sharing their ideas with others. So strong readers can really write clearly, they can explain their thinking and express themselves with confidence. And these skills, of course, don't just matter in an academic sense. They really matter in everyday life, in job interviews and workplaces, and every other piece of life. And then, of course, early literacy is also about connection. So stories and language can really help children understand themselves better. It can help them understand their families and their communities better. Reading is really great for allowing people to see people who are like you, or who are like the children that you are teaching. And it teaches kids how to be more empathetic. It teaches them to understand that people might be different, but we're also very similar in a lot of ways. So it really becomes a bridge. Literacy becomes a bridge to connecting children to different perspectives and different opportunities, and to the other people around them. Okay, so let's move to the next slide. Now, this is always kind of a rough stat which is very important to show, but it's always a little bit of a scary thing to see when you first see it. But it's really important for us to understand. Basically, if there's a saying in the early literacy world that by the time a student reaches 4th grade, reading is no longer, or you're no longer learning to read. At that point, you are reading to learn other things. So that's why reading proficiency by the 3rd grade is such a pivotal milestone. Children who don't reach that milestone are much more likely to face other academic struggles in their life. They usually have lower graduation rates, different reduced opportunities in adulthood in general. And, in fact, one of the major things that happens is kids who are not at that reading proficiency level, they oftentimes have a much lower earning potential later on. So they're not making nearly as much, and their career prospects are a lot lower. And unfortunately, here in South Dakota, we have a real challenge with reading proficiency. According to the 2025 Kids Count data book, which has a lot of data from 2024, 72% of our 4th graders are not reading at or above proficiency level. So that's basically 3 in 4 of our kids. And that's a lot worse than just even 2 years ago, when we were at 68% of 4th graders reading proficiently. And then, of course, you can see on the chart here in 2019, we were at 64%. So it is steadily getting a lot worse. And when you think about it, that is that is terrifying because we are not giving those kids a real chance to succeed. We are ranked right now at 39 in the nation for education, which is really sad. um, and the other thing we know is that we have basically 31,000 children in our state that live below the poverty line. And of course, we know that poverty compounds all of these education issues. We have, when it comes to poverty and unstable housing and health issues, or parents who are having to work multiple jobs, we know that all of this adds stressors to a child's life. And that can really limit that child's ability to learn. So yeah, this is it's a rough statistic, but it's important to show. Can we move to the next slide? So this also illustrates some of the different outcomes that can happen when you're not reading at proficient levels. There was a study commissioned by Read Charlotte, which is another campaign for grade level reading in North Carolina, and it was conducted through UNC Chapel Hill. And it showed that compared to their peers with above average reading ability, students who have below average reading levels in grades 3 and 4 actually have 25% less household income in their early to mid 20s. They're also about 2 times more likely to not attend or even apply for college. And they're 50% more likely to experience unemployment. They are also more likely to experience negative health outcomes like mental health issues and substance abuse. And like I said earlier, overall, just having a less successful chance at life. There is some hope when it comes to this, though. While we know that not reading proficiently at grade level can be really detrimental for a child, the opposite of that is that we know that investing in early literacy really pays off. So we know that if children are reading proficiently, and if we are able to help children get to that level, they're more likely to graduate, they're more likely to pursue higher education, and of course, they are more likely to have stable jobs. And in fact, one of the things that this study noted was that the researchers actually called early literacy a super strategy for improving life outcomes. So basically, if we actually put a lot of effort into helping our kids reach grade level reading proficiency, both before and during elementary school, it's one of the most powerful things that we can do to really improve social mobility, economic stability, and just overall well-being for kids.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. So you guys got the numbers, the data, basically understanding why it's so important, right? What is your guys' role in helping these children be successful in their life? We're going to look at principle number 2, which I'm going to talk about. So literacy development is relational. When you hear some of that and the data behind 3rd grade and 4th grade, reading scores and levels, sometimes it's easy to feel disconnected as an early childhood teacher, right? But you guys, everything you're doing right now is early literacy. So talk a little bit about how it's some of the relationships that you are building. So if you're not familiar with the pyramid model, ECC, it's kind of our backbone here. I'm not going to dive too deep into it, but that bottom there, the nurturing and responsive relationships, we have to have that in order for children to be successful in the early learning environment. And you will also see a decrease in challenging behaviors. And children learn language and literacy best through responsive, joyful interactions with adults, which comes from those nurturing and responsive relationships. So it captures this idea that these secure, positive connections with caregivers sets the stage for everything else. When adults tune in, when you respond, when that baby coos, when they're giving you the I'm tired cues, when you acknowledge the joy that a child has as they have put their lid on their own water bottle correctly. You're not only supporting their emotional security to you, but you're also fueling language growth and brain development. So the other layers of the pyramid are important, but without this base of the nurturing relationships, everything else isn't going to happen. And this could be even mirrored in their life, right? If you guys don't have this base of the relationships that allows them to have these rich literacy experiences, like Hannah said, they're not going to be able to succeed to their full potential. So we're going to look at the best strategy that I hope you can take away if you don't already practice this, but it is the concept of serve and return. So serve and return, if you haven't heard this phrase, hopefully you're already engaging in it, but it is where you are interested with whatever that child, baby is doing, saying, and you're reciprocating it. So one, you're sharing the focus. You're paying attention to what that child is looking at, playing with, or interested in. You follow their lead, and this builds trust and engagement. Two, you support and encourage that. You smile, you nod, you use words, you give them vocabulary, you define it, you narrate it, you gesture to show interest, and that encouragement strengthens the connection and it motivates them to continue, right? Because they see you engaged and excited. You name it, again, put words to what they're doing, they're seeing, they're feeling, which I hope you're all doing, but those toddlers who have emotions through the roof, you're helping them develop social emotional skills by naming it, providing them some context. You seem frustrated that you can't put your shoes on. That must be really hard. Walking them through, giving them tips, acknowledging those feelings. This is huge for them. Then take turns back and forth. Let the child respond. Allow to hold space a little bit. Words, babbles, actions, and then reply again. Keep it going back and forth. Diaper changes, great time to do this. You can really establish some secure connection time there. Singing, finger plays, practice endings and beginnings. Notice when the child signals that they are done and respect that. So if you come over and you sit down and you want to engage in Lincoln Logs with your group of 4-year-old boys and they look at like you're crazy and you really don't belong there in that center, respect that, right? But it also might show that you need to continue trying because if this is something new, they're probably not used to you engaging in play. So find ways to continue to try. Smoothly transition to new interactions, modeling healthy starts and finishes. So serve and return is super simple, but it's super powerful. And it transforms all these small daily moments that you guys don't realize, hopefully you're already doing, and it capitalizes into brain building experiences. So then to summarize that again, model everything you're doing, narrate it. I know this sounds really crazy and you'll probably feel really weird when you're doing it at first, but if you're in an infant room, in a toddler room, talk as you're doing things. It has so many benefits because there are all of the vocabulary work terms that you're teaching them. You are validating their feelings. So if you narrate, oh, you sound like you're hungry. That's a hungry cry. I will go put your bottle in the warmer. Let's wait. We're going to set the timer. And when it's done, it'll be time to eat. Then touch base with them again. Oh, I hear you're still hungry. It's almost done. Let's look. Oh, 30 seconds left. Narrate what you're doing. Same with diaper changes, hand washing, and even into your older grades too. Talk about what you're doing, and you can use richer vocabulary at that point. Don't dumb it down, right? Use language that you would use with adults. Listen to them and respond to them. So that serve and return. Those back and forth interactions just are so huge. And like I said, it might feel funny at first, but it is super powerful for building that relationship, which in turn is also those early literacy experiences. So, all right, we're going to pop back over to Hannah. No, this stays with me. Sorry, Hannah. The Science of Reading is a guide. So Hannah touched on all those staggering numbers, right? And the data that shows we're really not doing the children justice, right, with our literacy. So there is something called the science of reading, and this is not a curriculum. This is cumulative studies and broad studies. This has been going around since like the late 90s. This is not something new. This is tons of scientific data, brain scans, and they've pulled it together and they have found there are 5 pillars that we need to concentrate on for literacy skills. And it's just science-based. This isn't somebody in Washington, D.C. that doesn't have a background in early childhood literacy. This is coming back to science, like what is proven to help children gain what they need. And it is phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. Now, again, you're probably like, well, that's elementary school. Like, I don't need to worry about, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. Well, you're doing some of these things already, and I'm going to dive into what you're probably already doing and hopefully give you some ideas of things you can do even more in your classrooms. So here are those pillars again. So let's break them down a little bit. Phonemic awareness. Rhyming games. How many of you already sing rhyming songs, right? You're doing that. Nursery rhymes. Come up with rhymes. You probably sing Down by the Bay and you allow the children to come up with, or when you're doing Willoughby Wallaby and you're inserting that different consonant at the beginning and it sounds the same. You're teaching phonemic awareness right now. Sound manipulation. So when they segment it out, when they start to act, that's sound manipulation. That's phonemic awareness. Phonics, letter recognition, when they're able to start understanding that letters make sounds, so phonemes. And phonics is the explicit instruction. Now, phonics has a bad rap. A lot of people think to do phonics, you have to have like flashcards and that's it. Now, that's not to say that you can't use flashcards to supplement what you're teaching, but you should also find ways to teach this organically and in ways that interest the children. And what I mean by that is find games, find opportunities in books, find ways to implement it during their play. So a really great one that I like to play, or I did when I was teaching, is I Spy, but with a letter sound. So you're sitting at circle time and you're transitioning to wash hands. I spy with my little eye something that starts with B, B. And then each child's going to get a turn. And what's going to happen is they're going to look around the classroom and they're going to start saying items and they're going to recognize, okay, that doesn't start with B, B, chair, no, ball. So they're going to start working on that. So you can find ways to make this fun for them. It doesn't have to be flashcards. Now, that's not to say that those don't have a place as well. Fluency. This again is one of those terms where it's like, okay, this is elementary, I don't need to do it. Shared reading, reading the books together, pointing to the words as you read. This helps them understand the flow of reading, the progression of reading. Repetition. I don't know any early childhood teacher who doesn't go, oh my God, I don't want to read this book again. It's the only book they ever pick when they have a choice. But do you know why they do it? They are comfortable and confident in that. And that feels good to them to hear you read it again and again. They get to understand the flow and it's so comforting for them. They feel like they're on your level. They know what's going to happen next. They're not left wondering, oh my gosh, what does Pete the cat step in next? Well, they know it's blueberries, right? They've already read this 200 times. So that repetitious reading is so good for them. Vocabulary. Do this organically through your play, when you're reading books, pause to introduce new words, but also you can do it in fun ways. You can have a word of the day. I'm sure you've seen those calendars that people have on their desk where there's like a Webster's dictionary term. Obviously, you're going to scaffold it down a little bit, but this would be a great idea to have up at your circle time. So maybe you're talking about apples in the month of September because it's fall. So maybe you want to have up there orchard, right? Little bit harder. Not a lot of kids have heard that. How are we going to introduce it? And then this word, they're going to get to practice because you're doing it in other areas in the classroom, right? Maybe you have an apple sensory bin, so they get to say they're building an orchard. So introduce that vocabulary in organic ways, but also planned ways too. Talk about books, discuss the stories you read together. Comprehension. Ask questions when you're reading a story or after the story. Open-ended questions. What was your favorite part? What do you think would happen next? Allow them to think about it so they comprehend the material. They're putting it all together. This is a foreign concept, right? Reading, is not something our brain is hardwired to do. It's hardwired to speak, but this is hard for them to think about books in this way. So help them practice, walk them through it. At the beginning of the book, Did you like it when Pete put on his new shoes? Do you have new shoes? How does that feel? Allow them to engage in retelling the story. Encourage your child to come back and tell that story again. What do they concentrate on? That can be really telling too. Like, what did they pull out of that story? Oh, they pulled out that he was mad. Okay, we're really big into emotions right now. This is good to know. So, uh, these words sound scary, sound like elementary teachers should be working on them, but I promise you, these are things you guys can be doing right now if you're not already. This was a handout that was sent out as well. And just like Hannah with her handout, I'm not going to go over everyone for sake of time, but there are some great options and opportunities for you guys to be implementing science of reading right now with your age of children. So it breaks it down into 0 to 2, so your infant and toddlers, and then it can break it down into like your phonemic awareness. So there's just some really great ideas here that if you have time and are looking for suggestions, this would be a really great one to even laminate and have up in the classroom so that you get that daily reminder too. Okay, now we're going to turn it over to Hannah.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so the next pillar that we identified is focusing on children's individual strengths and cultural knowledge. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. Yeah, so what's really important to keep in mind is that every child is coming to you carrying, their own language, their own family stories, songs, other cultural traditions. And it's really important to know that these are not obstacles to literacy. They're often the building blocks of literacy, actually. Oftentimes we will slip into this deficit thinking where we're assuming that multilingual children or those who are growing up with different languages are somehow behind when it comes to learning, traditional English. But really, the truth can be the opposite. We just need to look at it in a different way. So a child who is switching between different languages isn't necessarily confused. They are showing us how flexible their brain can be. And a family that is telling their children traditional stories is strengthening the same narrative and comprehension skills that support reading. And then, of course, also when families are singing songs that are passed down through generations, they're teaching rhythm and rhyme and memory. And these are all similar patterns that children rely on when they're learning to read. So we can really use that cultural background as a strength for kids when they're learning to read. So it's important for us to focus on cultural knowledge when we're teaching literacy skills. Let's move to the next slide. So we know that culture can really be a protective factor for kids. We know that when children's cultures and identities are honored when they're learning, they will feel more confident. They'll usually be more engaged in the content that you're teaching, and they will perform better overall academically. Kids really thrive when they know that who they are is valued. So research has shown that cultural identity and intergenerational knowledge can act as protective factors for children, especially those who might have some other difficulties in life or other barriers that they're trying to overcome. So when classrooms and different literacy spaces reflect and respect that child's culture, their engagement will rise, their confidence will grow, and they will learn these skills a lot quicker. So that's why it's important for us to really create literacy opportunities that are celebrating different cultures. This could really be as simple as making sure that the classroom libraries that you have are including books with diverse characters. Especially here in South Dakota, we want to have books that are offering Lakota language translations, or it might even be helpful for us to partner with different community members who are skilled when it comes to oral storytelling. These practices can connect literacy to traditions that already hold a lot of deep meaning for kids, and it can make reading much more relevant when it comes to those kids. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So obviously I've been talking a lot about how representation really matters. And so our children really need to see their own cultures and their own languages reflected in the books that they're reading in order to really develop that love of reading. So if you are wanting to intentionally diversify your library. Here are a few different resources that you can look at and look into. So Diverse Book Finder is really great because it has a database full of children's books that feature diverse characters. And then there's also We Need Diverse Books, which is a publisher actually that really intentionally works to get these stories out into the world. They have some great book lists and different resources that promote inclusive literature. And then Indigenous Reads Rising is really great too if you're looking for some authentic Native American children's literature. But I also want to point out that it's not just about books that you put on the shelf. It's also sometimes really important for kids to see these people in their lives and to invite those cultural leaders into the spaces where they are learning. So if you have the opportunity, I would really encourage you guys to invite role models who can reflect a children's culture. That can be a very powerful way to affirm, a child's identity while also building those crucial literacy skills. And I'll show you, or I'll explain a little bit of an example of how we did this with Black Hills Reads. So let's go to the next slide. So at United Way, through our Black Hills Reads initiative, we have something called Imagination Book Stops. And these are resource guides where we are working with educators to build these activity guides that are based off of books that are either from local authors or books that come from the Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. And what we've been doing lately is taking some of these books and having an educator actually facilitate free in-person lessons with different schools and early education programs throughout the Black Hills. So each book stop event is built around one of these activity guides, and then it also comes with free supplies. So we will usually provide a free book for each child. We will provide all the materials that are needed to do the craft or activity that's associated with the book. And then we actually have an educator that we work with who comes in and teaches those lessons. So on the screen here, there are 2 imagination book stops that we have had developed recently. And these are both based off of Lakota stories and from local authors. So we've got one on Muskrat and Skunk by Donald F. Monolo, and then we have Thunder's Hair by Jesse Taken Alive Rinkuntra. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing those names. I'm never good at pronouncing names. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So one of the cool things that we've been able to do with those book stops is actually invite the author to come help with the in-person event. So this is an image of an event last year where we were able to invite the author of Muskrat and Skunk, Donald F. Marlowe, to speak to students in Spearfish. So he was able to read the book aloud, and he actually incorporated a lot of the music and dancing that was related to the story in his lesson, which was super great for the kids because they were so engaged in the learning about the story, and they actually had a really fun time. It wasn't just that they were told to do a specific activity; they were being engaged in the music and the fun of it. So students were able to, walk away with a deeper understanding of the story and more of a personal connection to the story as well. And we actually received really, really positive results or positive feedback from the teachers and who participated in that event. So what I want to emphasize, though, is that our role when it comes to educating children is not to fix children or to replace their cultural knowledge. The role is really to build on what they already have and what they are bringing to the table and using their strengths to the advantage of that child. Because really that is the best way of teaching kids. It's not to try and tell them that what they are already doing is wrong. It's to help incorporate that into the lessons that you are teaching. And we can go ahead and move on to the next section.
Okay. Thank you, Hannah. That was great. I hadn't seen those lesson plans before I met with Hannah, and I think they're phenomenal. So I'm really excited for you guys to get those as resources to hopefully implement. And what a great way that, I mean, it's set up and structured for you guys. You can see exactly what you need, how you're supposed to approach it. So what a great resource. Thank you, Hannah. Okay, principle number 5, a literacy-rich environment matters. So the messages that you're conveying with your print and even your pictures for our pre-readers, those matter. So we are valuing our children as capable learners. So what are you preparing? What are you putting out there? So literacy thrives in spaces filled with meaningful print, stories, and opportunities to use language. So do the children in your care have opportunities daily to see, hear, and interact with language all day long? So it's not just about having books in a library, but it's about embedding print throughout your classroom. Do you have things that are labeled? Do you have things that have meaning to children? So do you have posters of emotions, maybe your classroom rules? And while it can be beautiful to have a ton of teachers pay teachers stuff on your walls, is that aesthetic for you as an adult and pleasing? Does it have meaning for the children? So try and look at it through a critical lens when you approach your classroom and think about, what are the children seeing? Why is it up for them? Is it for them or is it for me? Also providing opportunities for storytelling, like Hannah said. Do you have time for them to reflect on some of the books that you read? Do you have people that can come in and read books to them? And then conversation time too. Too often I see teachers when I'm in classroom miss opportunities to have conversations with children. So there's beautiful times during free play. Meals are such a great time to capitalize on having some of those conversations. And I know as a teacher, it can be absolute chaos at mealtime because maybe somebody's out getting caught set out for nap time. The other one is trying to change. Somebody had an accident in the bathroom. So I understand sometimes the day-to-day grind doesn't allow for that. But if you're able to pause and create space for those meaningful conversations in some of those times, it is really a beautiful opportunity. I already said like labeling your classroom, your items, having signs that have meaning for the children. So maybe a stop sign at places throughout the center that you are going to need them to stop. So if they have to stop before they go out onto the playground, maybe they have to wait for another classroom to come in, have a stop sign there. Allow them to start having that because even your 18-month-olds are going to recognize, right, what the giant red octagon means, right? They're going to start to have those pre-reading skills. So have signs that have meaning for them. Make sure when you have language or labels up that you're making sure it aligns with the age of the children. So if you have 4 and 5-year-olds who are maybe starting to read, maybe you can have some just words up that they can sound out, some CVC words. But if you have 3-year-olds, you're probably going to want to have pictures on there, right? And even younger, you might just want pictures on things and not have print right away. So just making sure that you are doing it intentional for the children that you're providing care for. Writing centers are beautiful, having an opportunity for them to go practice being writers. And then cozy spaces, so libraries, safe spaces where they can feel comfortable and invited to read and partake and enjoy a book. And then it is really just about how you use these tools too. I see teachers reading all the time when I'm in classrooms, which is great. But what I don't see as often is teachers look like they enjoy reading the book. You should enjoy reading the book to the children. You should do the voices. You should engage in that fun. That is going to keep them interested. So make the voices, pause, facial expression. How you model and approach these early literacy experiences is going to be mirrored back to you in the children. They're going to see that and they're going to approach it with that same enthusiasm. Okay, back to pyramid model. You guys are going to just get this hammered in at any avenue, I guess. Um, the next one I want to talk about is the high quality supportive environment. So the literacy rich environment, this is a part of that. Visual schedules, even if it's just pictures, those are pre-reading concepts, right? When they can see that one item's done and moving on to the next, that's great. How do they move when they're reading? That word's done. I'm moving on to the next. So if you have 4 and 5-year-olds, I always encourage you to do a visual schedule from left to right because you were teaching them we move from left to right just as we're reading, right? First then boards. If you don't have those older 4s and 5s, start with the first then. These are beautiful opportunities for relevant pictures for them, cue cards. All of these things are early literacy experiences, but they're also elements of high quality supportive environments that support children through social emotional opportunities for them to learn how to navigate their day with less stress and less anxiety. It helps them be independent and they're confident in knowing what's going to happen next in my day. I'm not going to guess what time it is to clean up because sometimes my teacher just starts to clean up. I know that when the timer beeps, I've got 5 minutes left. I can start prepping myself. So these are all really important, high quality, supportive environment elements. And then when you pair that with the nurturing relationships, the visuals communicate respect. They say, I want you to know what's happening and I want you to feel successful so that we all can move through this day, this educational journey successful. This resource that's here on the right-hand side was attached in the email. It's also found on challengingbehavior.org. All of the pyramid model resources are absolutely free. If you want to go on and poke around, it is insane the amount of things that are on there, but you can find some really great items to use. And speaking from what Hannah just spoke on, they have multiple languages. So you can get Spanish, Muslim. I don't know if they have much Lakota, but it is if you have any child that speaks, they have Russian, Ukraine. I mean, if you have a child that speaks another language, go on there because they probably have a resource for you. The next thing with literacy rich environment that I just wanted to draw attention to is a concept called environmental print. And it's when print becomes personal, when children see it in their environment, their day to day. They get to see it in their surroundings, logos, labels, signs, menus, posters, cereal boxes. I don't know how many children first understand that those golden arches mean French fries before it says McDonald's, right? That's environmental print. That's pre-reading. They see that logo and they have connected it to an idea and a concept. So why does this matter? It bridges the gap between spoken language and written words. So it builds their confidence. They realize, I can read. I recognize that that is the McDonald's logo. I know we're going to get French fries, that is so huge for them. Something else that they're going to start to get really familiar with their name. When you start using their name repetitiously, they get comfortable and confident that that's my name because she put that on my piece of paper, because that's on my cubby, because that's on the note that went home. So that's environmental print when they see it like that. So it supports literacy and independence, helping them feel comfortable, make sense of routine, spaces, and choices. So how you can use it, label your environment, we already touched on that. Bring in familiar print. So it's not as common as it used to be, but if you have takeout menus, bring them in. The next time you're out to a restaurant, ask if they still have a print takeout menu, bring in. Bring them in, allow for them to engage with those. An environmental print board, this is something I did when I taught, and you can do this as like a show and share idea. So everybody gets a chance to bring in something from their environment and we get to hang it up and we talk about it. You get to talk about not only the logo, but the letters that are on it. So you could even go as far as, Johnny, when it's your week for show and share for environmental print, I want you to bring in something that starts with the letter T. And so then he gets to go home and help mom and dad look through all with T. So this makes it more personal. It also deepens the learning, brings the family in to see that what they're doing at home is early literacy too. And you get to have that conversation with them that when they're out grocery shopping, talk about the letters that they see, talk about the logos that they see, ask if the children can pick out the Ritz crackers, not based off of you pointing to it, but can they either recognize the logo or the letters? So really helps make it more authentic to them and real and read their environment. Okay, we're over to Hannah.
Perfect. Um, Yeah, so the next pillar that we wanted to talk about, or to make sure that you guys recognize, is that families and communities are literacy partners as well. So we all know that literacy doesn't happen just at school desks or in the classroom. It's really important that literacy is being built when it comes to bedtime stories and conversations in the car. Um, like Rose said earlier, like reading signs at the grocery store, like all of that is building early literacy skills. And so when we're thinking about literacy in that way, where it's all encompassing of every, all of the different places that you go can be building those literacy skills, we can see that, families and communities are really essential partners when it comes to a child's learning. Next slide, please. So we know that when families are engaged, literacy can become more life-wide, not just school-based. Um, Children only spend about 20% of their waking time in school. The rest is really in their homes, in the community. So what happens there matters deeply for literacy. Um, when children are surrounded by language-rich opportunities, like Rose mentioned earlier, they begin making natural connections between the words and pictures and their real life experiences. So babies and toddlers are already starting to link objects to names and images when you are bringing, outside experience into the classroom and connecting things from the environment with the classroom. And as children grow, they are continuously building those literacy skills through things like play and stories and conversation in settings that are not just in the classroom, but with their families and with other kids that they're, or kids or adults that they're hanging out with in their everyday lives. Next slide. Um, Yeah, so how do families play a critical role in developing foundational literacy skills? Well, we've already gone through some of it, but I want to kind of emphasize a few different points of like how different families can work to build these literacy skills. So the first thing is early exposure to language, or that's the one that I'm going to start off with. Um, Caregivers are really our children's they're our children's first teachers. So by talking, singing, reading, narrating routines, even families are providing different skill building opportunities when it comes to vocabulary and grammar and comprehension skills. Families are really important also when you're trying to create literacy rich environments, like Rose also mentioned earlier. I feel like I'm building off of a lot of what you said, Rose. So great job. Um, so obviously we want to encourage our families to have homes filled with books. We want them to try and label items if possible. We want them to offer cozy reading spaces that might encourage children to really fall in love with reading. We also want them to support writing skills. Oftentimes people will forget that writing is an important piece of literacy. It's not just reading, but it's also developing those writing skills. And of course, when you're younger, you might not be able to write out full sentences or paragraphs or things like that, but things like scribbling or encouraging drawing, experimenting with different letters and experiencing with different colors, coloring sheets, like all of those things are developing a child's early literacy skills and their fine motor development. So those are things are really important. It's also really important to celebrate literacy. Um, I think Rose mentioned this earlier as well, but just being a role model when it comes to literacy is super important. When kids are seeing that you like to read, the adults in their lives that they're looking up to, if they like to read, they want to model that behavior. They want to love to read as well. And so that is really important to be showing kids that, you enjoy reading books or that you like to read magazines or anything like that, making that a really positive experience is going to make sure that kids are developing or that they're going to want to read versus thinking of it as a chore. Let's see. Then there's also, of course, reading aloud. That's always a very important thing to do, or for families to do. Obviously, those language skills are being built when you're reading aloud. It's also exposing children to new stories or new genres and different ideas while building those, phonemic awareness skills, comprehension, and of course, like again, love for books. And then shared reading interactions are really important also. Um, so, like when you're reading with a child, you want to be, asking questions or predicting what happens next or having them predict what happens next in a story. Um, Things like that will actually increase engagement with the story and help them pick up on those skills much quicker than just reading it outright to the child. Um, and then, yeah, it's just celebrating, like I said before, celebrating literacy is super important. So trying to build that excitement as much as possible. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so what I was talking about previously was more about what families should be doing to build literacy skills in their kids. But sometimes when we're telling parents or caregivers about what they need to be doing when it comes to literacy, they feel a little bit overwhelmed. Like that's a lot of things that you're telling me I need to do, and there's a lot of things or a lot of pressure on me. And obviously parents do play a huge role in their child's life. So it's important to make sure that they're aware of that. However, what's important to recognize as well is that they don't have to do it alone. They have people like you as the classroom teacher to help them develop these skills. There are also a ton of different organizations and programs out there that are available to help when it comes to, the cost of books or making sure that you're getting developmentally appropriate books into your homes. So a couple of things that I always like to talk about from United Way is, or a couple of the programs that we're doing when it comes to helping parents build these skills in their young ones. So first up, we have the Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. This is one of my favorite programs of all time. And if you haven't heard of it yet, I very much encourage you to promote this amongst your families and also your kids if you have kids under the age of 5. Basically what this program does is for every kid 0 to 5 in the Black Hills, if you sign up, you can receive a free book in the mail every month. It's completely free. It gets mailed directly to you. So this is great because it helps helps parents build libraries for their children without worrying about the cost of books. Like you'll receive 12 books free every year. Additionally, it helps address that barrier of, sometimes people say that if you can't buy books, go to a library because you can get free books that way. But then we're not looking necessarily at barriers that can come with that, like transportation. Not everybody lives close to a library or has the ability to take their kids to a library every day. So this takes that barrier away because, we're mailing the book directly to the child. So, so this is always a great program that I recommend to everybody who has a kid 0 to 5. Definitely take a look at that. We also have something called Baby's First Book Bag, and I know Early Childhood Connections is one of our partners who helps distribute these bags. So some of you might already be aware of this resource, but basically this bag is geared towards children who are between the ages of 0 to 3. The bags are given out to families who are typically on the low income side, or if they have more risk factors when it comes to building reading proficiency in their kids. And basically what they are is they contain different board books and developmental resources. So it teaches, so basically we're giving you some different board books to use with those kids, but then also we're giving you resources for how to find additional books and what are the developmental milestones you should be looking for when it comes to literacy and things like that. Let's move on to the next slide. I also wanted to mention that, there are different things that organizations do, like story strolls. So our Black Hills Reads initiative has implemented story strolls like what is shown in the picture at a few different festivals in Edgemont recently. If you haven't experienced a story stroll before, basically what happens is we build a a series of different book pages where kids can continuously read the books as they're going through the different trail or the park that they're in. And this is a great way that families, if they're, wanting to go to a festival or go to a park, they can explore different literacy skills through something fun and interactive like a story stroll. And let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. There are also a lot of opportunities like community bookshelves or little free libraries, if you know, or if you've seen those in your neighborhood. One example that I like to talk about is called the Family Bookshelf, and it's something that we partnered with Black Hills State University and the Statewide Family Engagement Center to implement in different communities throughout Spearfish. And so basically these bookshelves had tons of different age-appropriate books, and then also conversation cards where you can, if you're at like a cafe or a recreation center, and you're just spending time with your family, you can go and actually read a book and have some different prompts that you can look at in order to interact with those books. So that's another way to really build those literacy skills outside of just the home or the classroom. And the main point that I'm trying to make with all these examples is that meaningful literacy doesn't just happen in school. It happens in homes, it happens in communities, it happens in those small everyday moments. So it's important not to just think that the only way to build these literacy skills is to, give kids worksheets or to be focusing on it all in the classroom. Like, we can really incorporate all of these literacy skills in the regular environment, and we can be encouraging the families that we work with to work on these skills as they're going about their everyday life. And let's go ahead and move on to the next section.
Okay. Well, thank you, Hannah. And Hannah's little last line there kind of is a great segue into this. So you don't have to just think of literacy experiences as worksheets or having to be done in the classroom where it's rigid and the children don't have enjoyment. So literacy is multimodal and it's playful. So it doesn't have to be something children don't want to do. You can find ways to make it where they're very engaged and they want to do it with you all the time. So multimodal just means that there's many modes that you can approach this. Many modes of communication: speaking, listening, drawing, movement, music, and even digital tools. Young children read the world with their whole bodies, right? So that story walk, what a great idea. You could even have that up at your facility. Like, maybe you have a story walk out to the playground, or if you have a large grassy area. There's so many ways that you could be implementing that in your day-to-day. So children learn through pretend play, singing, storytelling, building, and role playing. And play creates these natural opportunities for children to explore sounds, symbols, and stories, like a child writing a grocery list if they're at dramatic play, or if you could even add something else, like maybe you have recipe cards there and they have to start maybe creating and making apple pies, and what do those numbers look like on the card? So there's lots of through play. Singing songs with rhymes and rhythm, that builds phonological awareness. Acting out stories. So if you don't use puppets currently in your facility, do it. Is a great way to bring children in. It's also a really good way if you struggle personally as a teacher to do the silly voices or sing. Get a puppet, because now the puppet is the one that's acting crazy and not you. So puppets are great for getting children to be engaged and interested. So when we make literacy playful, children experience that joy and choice. So they're going to want to engage in it. So play is developmentally appropriate, and we can provide early learning experiences through play. Now, again, it doesn't mean there's not a place for flashcards or worksheets as an option for children to work on these things, but it should not be the only thing that children have to work on these experiences. So this is kind of a soapbox of mine for developmentally appropriate practices in regard to early literacy experiences. Forced pencil grip before children are able is actually more detrimental. So if we're forcing children engage in a tripod hold and they're 3 years old and their bones just, I mean, look at this x-ray graphic. Look at the difference from an age 3 to an age 7. That's huge. And if you're forcing them to do it before they're ready, you're actually creating more problems for them down the road because they're going to learn ways that are not beneficial. And when they get to be first grade, second grade, they're going to have to correct those or they're going to have to write the rest of their life like that. So making sure you provide opportunities for them to work on their dexterity, on their fine motor. I think Hannah touched on that earlier, but without forcing pencil grip. And so I just have a picture here of something that I did. It's pumpkins, it's fall, it's push pins, and it's rubber bands. This is a homemade geoboard. And so you're probably like, that is not a literacy experience. It is. This is pre-writing at its best. They're working their fine motor skills. So even infant and toddlers are working on their pre-writing skills. And you're probably thinking I'm crazy, but for us to be able to write, we have to have core strength, right? We have to be able to sit up and we have to be able to have coordination of our arms. So what do we practice in the infant room? They're working on sitting up, right? They're working on, maybe you set a toy just out of reach, so they're working on their balance, they're working on their hand-eye coordination, all of that pre-writing skills. So don't ever think that you as infant toddler teachers aren't working on some of this. You are. You just have to break it down in different concepts, okay? Okay, these are a couple of pictures of an example of how I taught multimodal when I was a teacher. I find a book every month, and that was what we read every afternoon. We read that book, what is it, like 21 days you're in school, and we found ways to learn about it in all sorts of different ways. So this was October, so I was trying to lean into for you guys fall, The Little Lady Who Was Not Afraid of Anything. If you're not familiar with this book, it is phenomenal. It is something that is called a cumulative structure, which I'm sure you're familiar with, in that it builds on itself and it repeats it. So another really common one is, this is the house that Jack built. This is the cat that chased the rat that ate the, that's the type of structure of this book. So again, it builds that competency because children know what you just read a page ago. So we're going to repeat it together. So this is beautiful for some of the science of reading concepts, right? It gets that competency and confidence there. But then we just found ways to implement it and learn in different avenues. So we had dramatic play. We got all of the items that build the scarecrow. That was in dramatic play. They could dress up that way. We had sequencing cards. So then they're working on math because they're putting things back in the sequence. They were able to write vocabulary. They were able to reenact it at a loose parts. We built an art collage. And then we also did a PE relay race where they had to dress up with their team. And I'll play this. And not only are they thinking about the book because they have to put on the items in order of the book, but also what every child doesn't want to have those things about you need to practice putting on snow boots before the snow actually flies, right? Because come December, we know that you're spending 30, 40 minutes just getting them dressed to go outside for 5 minutes, right? So multimodal, you can take one concept, one book, and create so many beautiful learning opportunities out of it. So for any visual learners, I just wanted to show some options up there. Okay, so to kind of break it down again, movement, you can find ways to do literacy through movement. That's singing songs, dancing opportunities, going on a walk, the relay game that we did there, drawing, that is storytelling. They are, and if you can have them dictate what they're drawing too, that's even more beautiful. Actual storytelling, allowing them to narrate for you or tell a story back, and then that imaginative play. That is many beautiful opportunities there. Okay, we're gonna back over to Anna.
Okay, yeah. So rounding out the 8 literacy pillars that we talked about today, the last one is advocacy is a literacy imperative. So personally, and I'm sure that all of you guys probably agree with me, I believe that every child really deserves the chance to thrive when it comes to literacy. Obviously, there were some pretty scary stats that I showed earlier, and so this is a huge issue that we're trying to work on whenever we can. But regardless of income or background or how children have grown up, they really deserve to be able to, see themselves in the books that they're reading, to learn through evidence-based practices, and to thrive in classrooms that are supported with, enough funding to support literacy-rich environments. Unfortunately, which I'm sure many of you guys already know this, that's not an automatic thing for us. There are so many parents and families who don't have access to affordable and quality early education opportunities, even though we know that the return on investment with early education is so high. Like if you have, I guess I don't have the stat in front of me, so forgive me if I say this wrong, but I believe last time I looked, it was like there was a 13% higher return on investment when it comes to economic mobility if you are investing in early education. So that is crucial. That is something that we should be doing every day. So that's why, but unfortunately that's not happening. So that's why advocacy is so critical. Let's move on to the next slide. So what are some things that educators can do when it comes to advocacy? Sometimes I know that advocacy can sound really intimidating, or at least to me, sometimes it does. I want to emphasize, though, that advocacy is not just like the grand gestures. Of course, there are times when you may want to testify in a more formal setting for policy changes, but you can also do things that are more everyday actions, like speaking up in meetings. If you see other people who there might be a better way of communicating cultural differences or improving literature that they have available to kids, like speak up about that. It can also mean requesting that the schools that children are going to have more diverse books in their library, or even your local library, asking them to have more diverse books that children can see themselves in. It can mean, testifying at school board meetings if you want to do something like that when it comes to, trying to increase funding for literacy specific initiatives. I know Rose talked about the science of reading a lot earlier. Obviously, there's a little bit of a renewed effort in the K through 12 system of trying to teach educators about the science of reading. But, we should have more of that, or more funding for those trainings for early educators and for families who want to learn more about how to teach their kids to read. So things like joining professional organizations that can amplify your collective voice when it comes to literacy, or serving on different committees or literacy task forces. Those things are really important and things that you can actively do if you're interested in this kind of work. I will say, when it comes to the work that we do at United Way, this is a huge thing. We have a few different ways that other people can get involved that we lead. So with Black Hills Reads, we have our Black Hills Literacy Committee, which basically we have a bunch of different local educators on board. We have school administrators and different volunteers who are just passionate about this work. And we all work together to support our local educators and find ways to improve literacy efforts. There's also an initiative that I help to lead called Early Learner Rapid City, which is made up of community members who want to enrich the lives of children through things like awareness about early learning, connect families to resources, and of course, like empower different families with the information and data that exists around early learning. So if you're interested in participating in any of those initiatives or want to learn more, you can always reach out to me. I'm sure Rose will share my email address. If you guys are interested, please do reach out. Yeah, so overall, I just want to encourage you guys to look for any ways that you can to be involved and advocate however you are comfortable. I think that's really important. Let's go ahead and move on to the next.
Okay.
Yes, perfect.
So now we're at what we've been ending our evening with the experts and next steps. So what do you take away from here? What can you do? And Hannah actually gave a really great summary there is finding out what people are already doing. If this is something that triggers in you a passion and you want to be able to have a voice and speak to the importance because you're the boots on the ground. You guys are the early childhood educators in it day to day, see these children with their growth or their struggles, right? So we've compiled this is not an all-inclusive list, but this is some of them. So Hannah already said Early Learner Rapid City. There's Early Learner South Dakota, which is the larger branch of it. It is an initiative of SEDACE, which is the South Dakota Association for the Education of Young Children. If you're a member of that, this is one of our advocacy lanes. So this would be a great way for you to have your voice heard. Black Hills Reads, which Hannah has, she is the executive director. Is that the title for there?
Just director, but thank you. Yes, director. Mhm.
Black Hills. This is something else you could join. The Campaign for Grade Level Reading. That is where Hannah pulled a lot of that staggering data from. So that is going to be something else that you can find and research more on. South Dakota Early Childhood Enrichment System. That is like the parent umbrella of ECC. So we belong to 5 different regions. You can see we're the dark blue one there. We have our resource hub, which if you're not a member of, I can absolutely have Joe drop a link to where you can go become a member. It's free, and there is a plethora of resources there for you guys to go through. And then the Rapid City Public Library. I know we have some attendees tonight that are not in the Rapid City area. However, your local library is going to have a lot of great opportunities as well. I know Black Hills Reads has worked in Spearfish and Custer, so there's all sorts of libraries that are going to have great opportunities for you to take part in too. So. Then professional growth, because you found next steps in regards to early literacy. What's your next steps as an educator? The pathways. So this was formally, you filled out a piece of paper. If you took your CDA, it's kind of revamped. It's more of a tree. So there's lots of different limbs. And it's basically a celebration of you. And what does that look like? What is your growth in this career? So it's a really great opportunity. And I will have Joe drop a link for that as well in the chat. Your CDA, if you don't already have it, free through ECC. Take advantage of it. It provides you with a great base knowledge, and you're more competent and confident in your ability to speak to things like literacy in early learning. If you have your CDA, I'm super excited to let you know that our articulation agreement with Black Hills State is complete. You get 10 college credits with our CDA transcript. They will be offering an associate's degree in early childhood fall of 2026. This is phenomenal because there hasn't been an associate's on the western side of the state basically ever. So this is amazing. Then they also have a bachelor's in SPED in early childhood. It's dual. So if you want to go further, you absolutely can. And the CDA, it's free. You might as well get free college credit, right? So this is an amazing opportunity. So chapter of NACE, which is the National Association for the Education of Young Children. We are going to provide you with tons of resources, support, connections. You can join if you're interested. I'm one of the chapter reps, so you feel free to respond to the email and I can give you my elevator spiel on that too. Okay, pre-submitted questions. Here we're going to dive into, and then we'll see if you guys have any that came up over the course of the training. So the first one, I have trouble getting all of my students to sit for a full story. What can I do? Hannah, I will let you start.
Okay, yeah. Um, I really think, my suggestion, and I know Rose, you're gonna explain a little bit more on this, but um, what's really important is to break things up into smaller pieces. So you really don't have to read a full story all at once. Um, I think oftentimes we're trying to get through an entire book within a certain span of time, but you can just read one page and ask a child questions, or you can move on to a different thing if they're having a hard time focusing. So just keep that in mind. You don't have to do everything at one time. But also things like trying to make them as engaged as possible with the story can be really helpful. So like if you're letting them have some different small roles in the book, like if there's a character in the book and you want them to maybe act out a piece of the story, sometimes that will make a kid more excited to participate in the book reading. Or even having them, actively be involved in the reading process. So like holding the book, flipping through the pages, giving them that physical job to do can really help them want to be a little bit more engaged. Yeah, Rose, what do you think on that?
I love all of those examples. And then I think also looking at your daily schedule, and I know this sounds weird because you're asking for advice on a story, but do you have a lot of sedentary tasks or activities before story time? Have they been sit, 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 sit? It's just passive, 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 and now you expect them to sit through something else. So intentionally look back at your schedule. When do you have story time? Is it planned at a time that they're going to be able to sit? And looking at the time that you are expecting them to sit. So children should realistically only be able to sit and engage in something like a story time or circle time 3 times their age. So if you have 2-year-olds in the toddler classroom, your max time that you should be making them sit and do circle time or a story is 6 minutes. And when I say max, that's like the golden day where everybody slept 10 hours and nobody's hungry and nobody's sick, right? That's your max. Like that's developmentally appropriate. That's what you should be your expectation. So making sure you're looking at your day and your structure critically. And then like Hannah said, find ways to make it engaging. So make sure you're having fun with it. Make the voices fun and make sure that the book you pick is also developmentally appropriate. So what I see a lot at the beginning, back to school time, is teachers want to throw these beautiful books out there because they've been holding on to, the giving tree, and they want to have this great lesson on having empathy for like thankfulness. But is it realistic to have them be able to sit through a longer, more structured, less involved book? No. Let's help them feel success right out of the gate. Get something fun and funny and short, and then story time with you. So just look at how you're approaching it first, and then hopefully with some of those suggestions, it will get better. Second question, what are simple low-cost ways to make my classroom more literacy rich without buying a lot of new materials? Um, I'll tackle it first. I loved thrifting when I was teaching. I loved garage sales because you can do so much with anything. Loose parts are amazing. I collected CD donations, like CDs, because nobody uses them anymore. And we use those for so many things. We use them for art. So beautiful, they, reflect off of the sun. So children were able to go and use that as an art medium. They could glue and put sequins on them. I collected loose scraps of quilting fabric from a little old lady. And the children invented so many things to do with those. They would make little beds. They would tie them into, kerchiefs. So try not to get in this my classroom has to be aesthetic. I'm only going to have lakeshore materials. Like there's so much beauty that can come from free and cheap items. All right, Hannah, what about you?
Yeah, I think one cool way, or I heard somebody tell me this once. I know it works for somebody, but having, actually having your kids be the ones to make stories or like have their pictures, or if they want to dictate a story to you and you write it down, however it wants to work. But having those stories that are created by the kids on the bookshelf with the other books as well, that is really cool. And it helps kids see that, they can contribute to literature, and their stories are important. So that is one way I think, all that really entails is just having, some paper and some colors and crayons and stuff. And so you can have your kids be the ones who are making your classroom more literacy rich, which is really cool. And then, of course, I know Rose talked about this all throughout the presentation, but, using everyday items. So, cutting out like those cereal boxes, or using, things taken from magazines, or just, things from your everyday life. Incorporating that as much into your classroom is great. Another example I'm thinking of is you can also, if you have access to some books, instead of having them all out at the same time, you can maybe rotate which books are out at different times of the year. So, if you have some more Halloween themed books, or Valentine's Day books, like, you can continuously just recycle the ones that you already have versus trying to find new supplies, because those are going to be fresher when you put them out again, and then you can put them back when that season is over. So things like that can help a lot. And of course, there are tons of organizations out there who would love to assist you with like putting more books in your classroom. Like, that's one of the things that I've learned working at United Way, is just that there are so many resources out there. So, if you are in the Black Hills area and want to reach out to me at Black Hills Reads, like, I would love to provide as many books as you want. Like, we would love to do that. And there are so many other nonprofits out there who would love to donate those kinds of materials to you. So, don't be afraid to reach out to nonprofit organizations and ask for a little help. Like, that is something that you can do as well.
I love that. It is a good segue. While I am reading this closing, if you want to drop in the chat, if you are a school age teacher, so just put school age. If you are a preschool teacher, just put preschool. And then if you're an infant toddler teacher, just put infant toddler. If you're a group family home, you could put all ages. So we are going to be giving away 3 packets of books tonight, which is from our Book Nook training, which comes with, it's about 4 to 5 really nice books, and it comes with lessons that go with it, and they're usually social emotional in the lens, but these are beautiful sets of books. And so we're going to give away 3, 1 infant toddler, 1 school age, and 1 preschool. So drop that in the chat what your age is, and then Joe's going to randomly pick. So while you're doing that, I'm going to close out. So this is from one of my favorite authors, Neil Gaiman. We have an obligation to read aloud to our children, to read them the things they enjoy, to read to them stories we are already tired of, to do the voices, to make it interesting, and not to stop reading to them just because they learn to read to themselves. So it was a good reminder for me when I read this, like, even though 2 of my children are fully capable readers, they really enjoy when we read together as a family. So just because they can read on their own doesn't mean that we're not going to do some family read alouds and read, we tried, our last one was The Christmas Pig, which is a J.K. Rowling book. So if you're familiar with Harry Potter, so it is family bonding time. And as you heard from Hannah, it does so many amazing, important things. So thank you for spending your evening with us. I hope that you guys broadened your understanding of the importance of early literacy experiences, and that literacy isn't just those worksheets and words. It's creating these systems where children, families, and educators can share stories, build connections, and thrive. It's honoring their cultural knowledge, nurturing their language through play, and embedding these evidence-based, culturally responsive practices into everything that we do on a daily basis. So you reflected on what it means to be relational through literacy, and you recognize families as partners, how to view language, storytelling, and identify as powerful assets. So hopefully you gain some strategies and you're able to return back to your program, your center, your classroom with this empowerment that you are doing amazing things for these children. So thank you for your dedication and your work. We see you, we see how hard it is, and I really appreciate you coming to things like this, because this is how these conversations start, and we can help everybody see the importance of the work that you do in early childhood. So are there any last minute questions before we get into the evaluation?
We did have a question, and it was when you were talking about CDA articulating for college credit. Does that apply to past CDAs, or is it just recent ones? How does that work,
Nope.
Rose?
Yep, it is all past CDA transcripts that you received from Early Childhood Connections or our regional partners. So if it's the ECE system and you have a CDA transcript, that will be able to be articulated in not only Black Hills State. So if we have people that are currently attending like SDSU or I mean, you can ask me for a list. I think we have 7 that we currently have agreements with. It's just I'm super excited about Black Hills State because it's Western and it's local and that hasn't happened before. So yes, if you have a CDA through us, however old, it will count. Okay. I did forget that I wanted to show you guys this really quick. We have 2 upcoming trainings that further your literacy education. So we have used books to promote infant and toddler social emotional literacy. This is the book nook that I was talking about. So if you do not get, if you're not picked for the infant toddler bag, you could attend this night and get a free set. So that is one of the things you get for taking that training. So that is on the 22nd. And then on the 24th, I'm going to be diving deeper into the science of reading in early childhood. So it's going to be a principles to practice. As Hannah spoke on, South Dakota is kind of having a movement across public education to start swinging the pendulum from balanced literacy to science of reading. It's going to be a process. It's going to take a while. But if we know that this is the way that it's going, it doesn't hurt for you guys to be experts in this as well. So if you'd like to attend that, that's on the 24th. Here is our evaluation QR code. And Joe, if you'll drop the actual link as well in the chat, just in case somebody doesn't have a QR scanner.
Ooh. I have to find that one, Rose.
Oh, it's in my notes. I am so sorry.
Oh, no, if it's
I
in
have
your
that
notes, I think I got it then. Hang on. I've got it.
Do you? Okay.
I do.
So then this training with ECC is a little bit different than our normal ones. There's no pre-post. This is just that once you've done the evaluation, you are free to go. While you are taking the evaluation, I am going to play a trailer for the documentary called Sentenced. And actually, Hannah and Black Hills Reads did a public showing of this last spring, I think it was. It's very
in January. Yeah.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
It's very powerful. It's very moving. Unfortunately, we did find out when we met, Hannah, Joe, and I, that it's not free on Peacock anymore. However, Hannah had said if this is something you have a lot of interest in, and maybe you own your own childcare center, or you know a lot of people that want to watch it, reach out to her and they can maybe figure something out. So while you guys are taking the evaluation, I'm going to show that.
Study after study show that at-risk kids who do not read at grade level by 9 years old are destined to a lifetime of struggle.
Okay, my wife texted me. I don't know how to say it. She wanted you to help me read it.
I don't know. Please. I don't know what special yeah.
43 million adults can't read well enough to get a basic job.
Try to go get jobs. They tell me to fill up the application. The closest I've been is my name, and that's it. How would I work if I didn't know how to build cars?
Both of my parents have been murdered when I was younger. School to me was like, I didn't care because I didn't have my mom.
Each year, millions of kids are sentenced to a future they don't deserve because of their inability to read.
If you can't learn to read, you'll continue to struggle, and slowly we begin to lose you.
It's just failure after that.
Every year, millions of children pass through our school system while actually falling farther and farther behind, heading towards a life of struggle.
I know my ABC. It's words I don't understand.
That's funny. He's going through the same issues like me. I hope it don't affect him in the future. I was devastated. Big word. Devastated. Don't know how to spell it, but yeah.
You know, I'm gonna do all I can to level the playing field.
Hey, how you doing, Brother Rico? I'm Marquise, so you got a sound on.
Oh, it's spelled.
Yeah, there you go.
Once you learn to read, you will be forever free. Frederick Douglass.
Okay, so again, I've seen it and it's still powerful. So we'll just have a couple of closing remarks. Hannah, if you have anything to say before letting people go.
Don't have much else to add. Just thank you all so much for being on today and working your best to improve literacy skills in our kids all the time. You guys are obviously doing the hands-on work, so we just appreciate everything you do. And yeah, of course, let me know if you guys have any questions. I will put my email address actually in the chat. So if any of you guys have any questions or want more resources that I can provide, please do feel free to reach out.
Amazing. And Hannah, I'm so appreciative that you jumped on with me. It was great to have your knowledge and passion for it in our little local area and be able to offer resources and tangible resources for these early childhood educators. So thank you.
Of course. Yeah, thank you.
And shout out to Joe for being my facilitator tonight. If you guys don't know Joe, he's the behind the scenes magic whiz here at UCC. So so before you guys log off, let me announce the winners. Joe did a random one. So winner of the book bags, infant toddler, we have Anastasia M. I'm not gonna try and say your last name, don't want to butcher it. So if you want to drop in the chat how you would like us to get you the bag of books, we can mail it, we can drop it off. Pre-K, we have Eve. So Eve, let us know. We can probably send one of our gals over to drop it off down there. And school age, we have Carla J. So again, Carla, if you want to drop in the chat how you'd like to receive those bag of books. So perfect. I am so thankful for all of you guys and everything you do every day. And I hope to see you guys at the next Evening with the Experts, which is in October. And that one is on art experiences in early childhood. That is with Dr. Desi Schoenwise, and she is the art methods professor at Black Hills State. I'll add another plug for our fall conference. If you are not signed up for it, it is October 4th. We have two amazing speakers. First one is Lindsay Guru, and she is a pyramid model author. She has wrote textbooks, but also Tucker Turtle, if you're familiar with that, which a lot of people are. She co-authored that. And then our afternoon speaker is Dr. Cheryl Wold, and she is a special education professor from Aberdeen Northern, and she's going to be on talking about the cycles of behavior and what you guys can do in real life time to help in those situations. So if you want or interested in learning how to register for that, email me and we'll help you out. So that is it. You guys are free to go. Thank you all so much for attending, and I hope I see you next time.